What's up, everyone? I'm Tamara, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Have you ever dealt with a really difficult kid? There's a good chance that that kid might be developing narcissistic personality disorder or borderline personality disorder. And I don't care what anybody says, you can see these disorders in children. And I know the DSM-4 and 5, they really don't want you diagnosing a kid with these disorders before they are young adults. But whether you have empathy for them or not, it's just like with an adult. Adults with these personality disorders are difficult to deal with. They take a lot of managing, a lot of patience, a lot of tolerance. It's extremely hard, and it's not fun when you have to be connected with somebody who has one of these personality disorders, even as a child. These children are going to have a lot of problems in school. The narcissistic kid is going to have difficulty with empathy. You can just see it. They're not connecting with their emotions at all. I remember working with a girl who I believe had narcissistic personality disorder. She was really developing it. She was a phenomenal basketball player. Even though she was growing up in poverty, she had a very natural talent. And she was having some difficulty with some other girls, so I stepped in to try to help them problem solve. And before we could even work anything out, she put those girls down so badly and deflated them by telling them how bad of players they were, and that she was a team of one, and how they were worthless and of no use to her. And so it was very difficult to work with the other girls because you could see them deflate, and it was hard for them to come back or feel comfortable speaking up. Little narcissistic children can be very intimidating because they're not connecting with empathy or compassion. They're just very blunt, say what they think no matter how hurtful it is. And when you ask them to connect with their emotions, that's going to be a huge struggle for them. They don't really internally connect with sadness, anger. They know what happy is usually, but those other emotions, they're going to have a difficult time with it, and especially as it relates to other people. They know what it feels like to be hurt, and it ticks them off if someone does the slightest thing to upset them. But if they do something to someone else, like the same girl was calling other kids derogatory names, and then when she was questioned, it was, they are that. And then I said, well, put yourself in their shoes. How would you feel? What would you do if someone called you that name? I would tell them that they're that, not me. So getting her to understand that your words are crushing, they're hurtful, they're painful, was very difficult to do. And when I asked her, tell me a trait, this is like a 10-year-old, tell me a trait about yourself that you really like or a characteristic. She said, I love my hair. I think I have great hair. And I said, what about inside? Like, what's something great inside? And she said, ew, I don't want to deal with my insides. That's gross. And I had to explain to her, what about words like kind, friendly, nice, respectful, those kinds of words. And so they can be really mean. And so you have to try to help them to internalize what those feelings feel like, and also help them to understand that even though you don't have empathy, you still have to memorize the fact that when you are punching somebody verbally, it's just as painful as physical. This same girl had a physical altercation with another girl who was really tough. I think that other girl had borderline personality disorder possibly, and she was like, I can't go home unless I beat her up. That's why I hit her. So this is a kid that is developing, first of all, survival skills, trying to make it, tough neighborhood, tough kids. And we do have to be careful when we're diagnosing children, because sometimes they are acting out because of their environment, or they could be acting out as teenagers when their hormones are going nuts. And so that's why we have to be very cautious. But I can guarantee you there are children who already have narcissistic personality disorder, and it's very difficult to deal with those kids because they are going to have some acting out behavior, and they may be very confident in some areas. Like this particular girl was very, very confident, and that's a great thing, but they have to learn how not to insult other people or put other people down, and you have to help them to develop some compassion for people. And they're not going to like it. They're going to wince at it. It feels icky to them. Like, I want to be tough. But yeah, they can be a challenge. Borderline personality disorder children, super difficult. I almost think it's easier to work with a narcissistic child than a borderline, because that borderline child is going to be very clingy in some way or another. They need constant attention. They're terrified of people leaving them. That's really scary to them. It's very triggering to them. Any type of shift or change can throw them into absolute, I'm losing it now. I remember working with a group of kids, and all of a sudden this one boy just lashed out at me, called me a little girl, just went nuts. And the crazy thing is, I hadn't said anything to this kid, had no interactions at all. It's just, who are you? I don't know you. And so that could be very triggering to a kid with borderline personality disorders. Like, you're disrupting my day, or let's say they get punished, or they have to go to in-house suspension or something like that, and you're moving them from one place to the other. They're going to have a huge reaction because you're moving them away from the people that they're very attached to. So these kids are going to have a lot of problems in school. More than likely, they are going to also have rages already, emotional outbursts, because they can't regulate their emotions very well, so they get really angry a lot. There's difficulty with impulse control, with, I want what I want right now. I can't wait. I need it right now. That type of thing. They have turbulent relationships. They trigger their teachers. It's hard not to have your buttons pushed by these kids, because they're gonna push your buttons and set you off. And what can happen with these kids is they can receive heavy punishments from some of their parents, where it's like, all I do is punish this kid. But they also need some positives. Everybody needs positive. Everyone needs positives, where you're telling them something good, or you're helping them to develop what are some great things about them. They can't handle always being in trouble. But these kids, they disrupt class. They can be incredibly difficult to manage, and so they also have difficulty with knowing their inner feelings, what feels sad, what feels angry, differentiating between those things, having identity issues at an early age. They can kind of go in and out of personality sometimes, where you're like, wait a minute, who are you right now? So they act out a lot. They get into altercations with other kids. They don't understand why kids might not like them, or why is somebody doing something to me. And they also have a hard time taking ownership of the things that they do that are wrong, and that makes it hard too. Sometimes their answers are very shallow because they struggle with the self. So both of these kids can have a lot of problems in school. Now, some narcissistic kids may be the top of their game in some area, like super talented, super smart, very confident. There are some narcissistic children, which I wrote about in my book, The WORKPLACE NaRCISSiST. I knew this narcissist who said that when she was a kid, she would insult the teacher and go round and round with the teacher and tell the teacher basically, "You're an idiot. Why are you giving us this work to do? Why aren't you just teaching us from your head? Why are you giving us worksheets? I don't want to do worksheets. This is demeaning," and not understanding that you're insulting an adult. They are getting paid to teach you however they've been instructed to do it. And so admonishing them in front of the entire class, even if you're a kid, is super degrading and insulting. The education system has their hands full with these kind of kids. Generally, you can look into their family history and there's gonna be some level of abuse or neglect, or maybe the parents were just too young and they're dealing with all kinds of other issues, poverty, not being able to get things together. Maybe they're bouncing their kid from place to place, person to person, and the kid is not really bonding with anybody. And so then you create this monster, especially if in your family you have people who genetically have these disorders, then you are increasing the chance that your kid is going to get that disorder, even if you don't, by just all over the place, inconsistent parenting, not bonding. I knew of a narcissistic child who was arguing with a child that was permanently in a wheelchair, and when questioned, it was, "Well, she said something mean to me, and so that's why I told her, shut up, ugly wheelchair girl." And not understanding why that is horrible to say. I mean, if you're gonna argue and you want to say, first of all, you should never say anything mean to anybody, but let's say you choose to put yourself on an even playing field with her. But to go there is such a low blow that it's difficult for you to even explain to anybody why you would say something like that. Children with borderline personality disorder are often angry, impulsive, and quick to believe that other people have wronged them, even when they haven't, or they've done the wronging. Teenagers with BPD will harm themselves and also have a higher risk of suicide. They will do a lot of cutting, some of them, because that relieves tension for them. So we have to take these things very, very seriously. And I wish we had more funding to rehabilitate kids. And that's why it's important to me to start identifying these disorders when they're children, because then you have a better chance of doing some rewiring in their brains of the damage that's been done if you can catch it earlier rather than when they are teenagers or when they become an adult. Now they've got a really difficult road ahead of them. Borderline children are super duper needy. They're gonna just drain the energy out of you very easily. I mean, and that's unfortunate, but they can be really hard to deal with. Children who have narcissistic personality disorder, they have a sense of entitlement, an inflated sense of self, interpersonal and relationship challenges. Now, you have to also keep in mind that children, when they're growing up, sometimes they can all be self-centered and into the self and me. So that's different. I mean, you have to take that into consideration too. Sometimes kids can be very selfish, disorder or not. However, these behaviors that you'll see are pretty extreme and off-putting. Sometimes with borderline children, it's a whole lot of hard work to help them rehabilitate, but you want to inundate them with some positivity, some security, some safety, talking through their behavior. Sometimes when they go into rages, you might have to step back a little bit and just let them get that out. And then once they do, then you process that with them. Like, what did that feel like? Let's talk about what happened and, work with them on, okay, if you are triggered, what are some things that you can do? helping them to make connections within themselves, but they don't have a sense of safety and security. That's always very fleeting to them. So I feel terrible for any kid that has this disorder, and I also feel for their caregivers or their teachers or anybody who has to work with them, because they are a full-time job, especially the borderline child. Even though the narcissist can be so cruel and crushing to other children, they're both very challenging to deal with. So if you've ever had to deal with any kids that you think have a personality disorder, let us know in the comments and how you handled it. Or if you were a kid with a disorder, a personality disorder, how did you handle that? Have you grown out of it? What are some strategies or some things that you think can help those kids? And definitely check out my book, Workplace NaRCISSiST. It's all about narcissistic personality disorder with a twist, and just helps you to understand the minds of a narcissist a lot better, and strategies you can do to protect yourself from them, because they can be very damaging. I will put the link to my book in the description box, and definitely check out my playlist on borderline personality disorder and narcissistic personality disorder. I've got a lot of great videos that will help you. I know these disorders very, very well. I've been studying them for years, and I think you'll get a lot of insight from me, and I'm happy to share with you everything that I know. All right, you guys, you take care and have a wonderful evening. Bye.